So recent polling does not look good for President Donald Trump, even though it has gotten a little bit better in recent weeks. But his reelection campaign still not doing the best, faltering. But don't worry, MAGA folks, because you know what? Jesse Waters is here to tell you how any poll that isn't pro-Trump is fake news.
Forget about the national polls. It's all about the battlegrounds anyway. Most pollsters are undersampling Republicans as high as 10 points. They do that just to depress turnout. Don't fall for it. And just a little perspective, Hillary was beating Trump in every single battleground state going into the 2016 election. What happened? Hillary lost every single battleground state. In addition, national polls showed Hillary crushing Trump.
Why does Jesse Waters sound like he'd been drinking? I'm just kind of curious, right? Like, I heard a little bit of a slur, like he's had a couple. Maybe so that, he could repeat that utter garbage that he was talking about. So let's get into it. Let's analyze this. So now, look, his argument is, well, Hillary Clinton lost every battleground in 2016, and therefore all of 2020's polls, they're wrong. Oh, okay, but that doesn't really make sense this time around. Why? Well, there's a lot of contributing factors. Turns out there's a lot of context and there's some nuance here. So we're going to get into that. So now let's talk about the factors that led to Hillary Clinton's loss once again, because we haven't went through apparently this enough. So in 2016, you guys remember the mood of the country was a lot different, right? For one, there wasn't a recession, there wasn't a global pandemic, and the candidate last time, Hillary Clinton, was a lot less likable than Joe Biden. This is not my personal opinion. I actually dislike Biden just the same, if not more, than Hillary Clinton. But in general, Hillary Clinton was much disliked. Yes, sexism played a role in that. And not only that, but of course, she went out of her way to alienate progressives. Like, Biden's a little bit different. Look, he's basically ignoring progressives and sometimes gives lip service to them while also saying outrageous things like, I would veto Medicare for all. And so, but at least, he didn't say like horrible, horrible things about Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders supporters. So that's the difference, right? So now, that said, substantively, other than just like the mood, right? Substantively, you have most of the country that now prefers government solutions to a lot of our problems. For example, Medicare for all is extremely popular. Over 70% of voters, registered voters, say, yes, Medicare for all. Let's do higher wages. We're now in favor of a universal basic income, things like that. So now I don't think we're going to get any of that with Biden. Maybe we'll get some more stimulus if a Biden administration wins, and if we're still dealing with coronavirus when he takes over, which I think we probably will be. But I feel like the country is a little bit more optimistic, or feels a little bit more optimistic when it comes to him. And I'm saying like the average voter, right? They think that Biden's incrementalist approach is going to help us get closer to some of those things, or at least, that we can push him in a general direction. I don't agree with that necessarily. Personally, I would say there's about a 3% chance you could push Biden on the issues and actually get him to adopt a more progressive stance. 3%. And that's fairly optimistic for me. But there's a 0% chance that you can push Donald Trump in the right direction. And so basically that argument, yeah, it's true, but it's a little moot, right? Because when it comes down to it, I don't see us really going forward with Biden. But at least we will not lurch backwards, which is basically the only argument I can see for Joe Biden. Harm reduction. At least that's my perspective, right? But look, so there's that, right? There's the mood, and there's where the country is when it comes to policy. But there's another difference, right? So now back in 2016, nobody knew how much of a garbage fire, a dumpster fire Donald Trump was going to be. Nobody knew, except, for us. in independent media because we warned you guys. We told you it's going to be a dumpster fire. But Main Street corporate media did not say that. They said, well, uh, we'll see if he becomes a standard corporatist Republican because they're in favor of that generally, right? Well, we saw how that went. Instead of the party changing him, he changed the party into what is basically his own cult, which is not a surprise because generally conservatives are authoritarians. By nature, they'll fall in line to what the donors and the leaders tell them to do. But now the country can see coronavirus rampaging throughout the communities. 40 million people are out of work. Unemployment has run out. 11 to 12 million people are now in danger of losing their homes. And the president is talking about how this is a Democratic hoax and we need to ban TikTok. Because priorities, right? But see, most of the people see Trump for who he is and what he's done. That's why he's got a 43% approval rating and a near 57% disapproval rating. That's an absolute disaster. Nobody wins re-election with these kinds of numbers. Okay. So you want to make a comparison between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. It's a little bit asinine, right? The 2016 and 2020 elections so far, it's just the numbers don't add up. Now, the national polling, as I said before, wasn't wrong generally in 2016. It was just a lot closer. You had Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump a lot closer in the polling. It never was going to be a blowout. But now, at least in national polling, you see blowout numbers. And even some of the swing states, you see blowout numbers. Now, let me give you the numbers from last election, right? So now the Real Clear Politics showed former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton beating Trump nationally by 3.2%. She actually won by 2.1%. So that's not very far off, except that what it was is that it was in the margin of error. And also, it didn't account for the Electoral College. She won the popular vote. She did not win the Electoral College. And again, that goes back to the swing states. And that's actually the one thing that I agree with Jesse Waters on, where he's like, well, I mean, it's the swing states that really matter. Well, in these close elections, absolutely, these swing states are important. And so we'll talk about that. And so what happened is in 2016, they got it wrong in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Donald Trump was able to get the gain the electoral victory by some pretty slim margins, right? They didn't count on likely voters as well as Obama to Trump voters. They, or count the effects of voter suppression, which is always present and should be factored into every election, and the fact that Hillary Clinton did not campaign in these states. And here you had these states that went to Trump, which means electorally, Donald Trump got a win. But that also means that Trump's win was kind of weak to begin with. He never had the popular vote. And so now his fortunes had reversed in a lot of these states, in these battleground states. So you look at Biden's numbers, right? At least nationally, he leads by more than 7 points. But in a lot of states, he still has an at least 5-point lead. Now, the comparison is bad. Jesse Waters should probably know that this is bad. But here's the thing. Jesse Waters is really catering to an audience of one. Trump, he watches Fox News. He sees that their own polls are stacked against him. But then here comes bootlicking Jesse Waters to say, no, Donald, it's okay. It's fake news. Fake polls. You're going to win bigly, so don't worry. Don't do anything about that. So, okay. You know what? I actually think that there's something else to this as well. I think Jesse Waters and the Republican establishment are worried about Donald Trump seeing that these terrible poll numbers and deciding to take his ball and go home. I mean, you guys remember the reports, right? Remember how triggered Donald Trump was when TikTok teens sabotaged his Tulsa rally? He's now out there trying to ban TikTok from the country, which, look, don't use TikTok. It is a Chinese app. It does, and it's not bad because it's a Chinese app, but because they do generally spy on their users. I know. Same thing with Facebook. I get it. I guess all social media really kind of spies on people. Um, but I guess if it's our own government and our own corporatist, or corporate overlords, then we're good. But not the Chinese corporate overlords. I understand the hypocrisy in that argument, but um, generally, yeah, that's what he's trying to do, and so that's because he was triggered. Not that he's not actually cares about Americans' private information going to another foreign government or to a corporation. He's not worried about any of that. No, it's just about China, right? Uh, and okay. Anyway, so now why is he worried about this, right? Why is Jesse Waters, at least according to my theory, wanting Trump to worried about Trump dropping out? Because it would be an epic disaster for the party, right? The whole party would implode into infighting. Look, that's what would happen if Donald Trump drops out, because then somebody would have to take his place, someone would have to take the mantle, and you forget that over 80% of Republicans have a favorable view of Donald Trump. They massively love the guy. And so whoever the establishment in the Republican side tries to put up, they're probably not going to like, at least not at first. And so I think there would be a complete electoral disaster, especially this close to the election. Having that happen, and then it would just destroy them down ballot, down ticket. They do not want that to happen. Their best case scenario right here is to let Donald Trump lose. Have him run, have Biden crush him, right? And then they can claim, oh, look at all the voter fraud. Wow, of the fake news, deep state took the election from us. What are we going to do? Right? And so whatever, all in order to keep the party united. And that's what they're really concerned about right now, as far as I think, right? I think the Republican establishment is not as concerned about Donald Trump losing, but about the longevity of the actual party apparatus. And so there's that. Mitch McConnell, he's worried about a wipeout in Congress. He's not worried about Trump losing their power, their base, having all those Trump supporting Republicans basically do a Republican or a Rexit, right? And they're worried about that. They're worried all that's going to happen if Donald Trump drops out of the election. Again, total speculation on my part, but it makes sense to me, right? And that's why these Republicans would rather choose to ignore the reality of polls, even when the polls are Fox News polls.